You've watched them your entire life. Ronaldo's rage after a missed chance. Messi's silence that somehow said everything. Ronaldinho's smile in the middle of a match that meant everything. Zidane's stillness in moments that would break anyone else. You watched all of it. You felt all of it. But you never understood what was actually happening inside their heads. Because the greatest footballers who ever lived were not just physically different from everyone else. They were psychologically different, wired differently, driven by things that had nothing to do with football, and everything to do with who they were as human beings. This is what they were actually made of.
Every footballer who has ever played the game falls into a type. Not by position, not by skill level, by psychology. The internal wiring that determines how they think under pressure, how they respond to failure, how they lead, how they hide, how they dominate, and how they disappear when the game needs them most. The legends you grew up watching, Ronaldo, Messi, Maradona, Pelé, Zidane, Ronaldinho, Beckham, Rooney, every single one of them fits a psychological type, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. These are every type of footballer, and the psychology that made them legends.
Type 1. The Perfectionist. Cristiano Ronaldo. Everything must be exact. The free kick taken again in training until it is perfect. The body sculpted beyond what any nutritionist demands. The celebration practiced. The image controlled. The standard set so high that even a Ballon d'Or year can feel like failure if the performance did not match the internal picture of how it should have looked. Ronaldo's brain runs on a loop of self-evaluation that never switches off. Every miss is immediately felt, visibly, publicly, without apology. Head down, jaw tight. The frustration of a man who holds himself to a standard no human being can consistently meet. This psychology produced the most relentlessly improved footballer in history. Ronaldo at 35 was physically superior to Ronaldo at 25, not by accident, but by obsession. The perfectionist does not rest because resting feels like falling behind. But perfectionism has a cost. The moments of joy are shorter. The celebrations are faster because the next standard is already waiting. Ronaldo never fully arrived. He was always chasing something slightly ahead of him. That chase made him extraordinary. It also meant he could never fully enjoy what he built. Type 2. The Genius. Lionel Messi. The genius does not try to be the best. The genius simply is, and spends their career quietly confused by why everyone else finds it so difficult. Messi's psychology is the most misunderstood in football history. He was called lazy, accused of hiding, criticized for disappearing in big moments early in his career. But what looked like absence was actually something else entirely, a brain that processes football at a frequency other players cannot access, conserving itself for the moments that matter.
Where Ronaldo chases perfection loudly, Messi finds it quietly. The dribble that should not work. The pass that arrives before the teammate has realized they are in space. The goal that looks simple and is completely impossible. The genius psychology is defined by instinct so developed it has become unconscious. Messi does not decide to do what he does. He does it, and then watches the replay wondering how that happened, the same way the rest of us do. The burden of genius is expectation that never ends. Every game must be extraordinary. Every tournament must be won. The genius is never allowed a human performance because they redefined what human performances look like.
Type 3. The Artist. Zinedine Zidane. The artist does not play football. They compose it. Zidane moved through matches the way a conductor moves through an orchestra. Unhurried, precise, every touch deliberate and purposeful in a way that only becomes clear after it has happened. The roulette, the chest control, the volley in the Champions League final that had no right to be as beautiful as it was.
His psychology was rooted in something closer to aesthetic intelligence than competitive drive. Zidane did not need the crowd. He did not need the noise. He needed the game to feel right. And when it did, he produced things that had never been seen before and have not been seen since. The artist's brain is deeply sensitive. Zidane's headbutt in the 2006 World Cup final is one of the most analyzed moments in football history. Not because it was violent, but because it was so human. A man of extraordinary self-control, brought to his absolute limit by words aimed precisely at his deepest identity. The artist feels everything more intensely than other players. That sensitivity is the source of their genius, and occasionally, the source of their undoing.
Type 4. The free spirit. Ronaldinho. Football made Ronaldinho happy. Genuinely, visibly, infectiously happy, in a way that no other player in history has managed to replicate. His psychology was built around joy. Not winning, not legacy, not records or trophies or the opinion of journalists. Joy. The pure, immediate, physical pleasure of doing something beautiful with a football in front of people who came to be amazed. The free spirit's brain does not process pressure the way other players do. Where the perfectionist feels the weight of expectation, the free spirit simply does not register it. The bigger the moment, the more relaxed Ronaldinho became. The more he smiled. The more he tried things that had no business working, and made them work anyway. This produced the most joyful football ever played. The elastico, the no-look pass, the skill that made defenders look like they had never played the game before, and always, always the smile. The shadow of the free spirit psychology is sustainability. Ronaldinho's career peaked and faded faster than anyone expected, because a brain wired for joy struggles when football stops feeling joyful, when it becomes obligation, contract, expectation, criticism. The free spirit cannot find the same fuel. He gave the world the most beautiful years, and then the joy went somewhere else.
Type 5. The revolutionary. Diego Maradona. Maradona did not just play football. He changed what football believed was possible. His psychology was the most complex and contradictory in the history of the game. A man from absolute poverty who never psychologically left the streets of Villa Fiorito, no matter how famous he became, no matter how many stadiums filled to watch him, no matter how many times he held a World Cup above his head. The revolutionary's brain is driven by something that goes beyond sport. For Maradona, football was identity, survival, revenge, and love simultaneously. Every match was personal in a way that professional athletes are not supposed to allow. The hand of God was not just a cheat, it was a statement. From a man who grew up being told that people like him did not get to win, that the rules were written by people who looked nothing like him, that the powerful would always find a way to take what the poor built. Maradona's genius was inseparable from his psychology. The same intensity that made him the greatest player many people ever saw was the same intensity that made his personal life a war he could never fully win. He carried too much, felt too much, needed football to mean too much, and it cost him everything outside of it. Type 6. The icon. Pelé. Pelé existed in a category that has never been replicated. The footballer who transcended football so completely that the sport itself became secondary to what he represented. His psychology was defined by a relationship with greatness that was almost serene. Where Maradona fought his way to the top from the outside, Pelé moved through football as though he had always belonged at its highest level, because from the moment he arrived, he had. World Cup winner at 17. The youngest, the most naturally gifted, the one who made the impossible look ordinary so consistently that ordinary became the baseline expectation. The icon psychology carries a specific burden, the weight of representing something larger than yourself. Pelé was not just a footballer.
He was Brazil. He was hope. He was the proof that someone from nothing could become everything. That weight never broke him publicly, but it shaped every decision, every word, every carefully managed public moment for 6 decades. The icon learns early that they are not fully their own. They belong to the people who need them to be something. And Pelé, gracefully, quietly, for his entire life, accepted that responsibility.
The Showman, David Beckham. Beckham understood something about football that most footballers never had to think about. That the game existed inside a stadium, but the footballer existed inside a culture. And culture could be shaped. His psychology was unique in football history. Technically exceptional, the crossing, the free kicks, the precision that won matches. But psychologically, operating on a frequency beyond the pitch. Beckham was not just playing football, he was building something. A brand, an identity, a version of a footballer that had never existed before. The showman's brain is wired for audience in the deepest sense. Not just the crowd in the stadium, the crowd everywhere. The magazine cover, the advertisement, the moment that gets photographed and remembered. This was criticized during his career. Too commercial, too focused on image, not serious enough about the game. But the showman understood something his critics did not. Attention is power. And power, used correctly, can take you further than talent alone. Beckham was not the best player of his generation, but he became the most known, the most seen, the most lasting in the cultural memory. And that was entirely by design.
Type 8, the warrior. Wayne Rooney. Rooney played football like it was personal. Every tackle, every sprint, every goal celebrated with a fury that suggested it meant something deeper than 3 points. The warrior psychology is rooted in a place where stopping is not an option. Not because of tactics or fitness, but because stopping feels like losing something that cannot be named but cannot be surrendered. Rooney arrived at Old Trafford at 18 as the most physically and psychologically intense young player English football had ever produced. Not the most technically gifted, not the most elegant, but the most present. The player who was entirely, completely, dangerously in every single moment of every single match.
The warrior does not play within themselves. They cannot. The concept of conserving energy, of choosing battles, of managing a performance, these are rational strategies for rational players. The warrior's brain does not work that way. What this produced was some of the most viscerally thrilling football of a generation. The overhead kick against Manchester City, the performances that carried teams through matches that should have been lost. What it cost was a body that absorbed punishment without complaint, until the punishment accumulated into something that could not be ignored. The warrior gives everything, and everything is exactly what it costs. Type 9, the hungry one. Every legend on this list had something to prove at some point, but some footballers never stop proving it, because the hunger that drove them never fully gets fed, no matter how much they achieve. You see it in the players who came from nothing and won everything, and then kept going. Not for the trophies, not for the money, for the feeling of answering everyone who doubted them one more time. Maradona had it, Ronaldo has it, Rooney had it in his early years. The hungry one's psychology is powered by a specific memory of being told no, of being released from a youth academy, of growing up where football was not a career path, but a dream that people like them were not supposed to have.
Every match is a response to that memory. Every goal is an answer to a question someone else asked about their ability years ago. This produces a relentless drive that cannot be coached into someone who did not grow up needing it. It is internal, burning, specific. The danger is what happens when the hunger is finally satisfied, when the doubters are silenced, when the trophies fill the cabinet and the records are broken, and there is nothing left to prove.
Some hungry players find new fuel, new questions to answer, new levels to reach. Others, when the hunger finally goes, find that without it, they do not quite know who they are.
Ronaldo chasing a standard that kept moving. Messi finding genius in silence. Zidane composing something nobody asked for but everyone needed. Ronaldinho playing because joy was the only reason he ever needed. Maradona carrying an entire nation's pain onto a pitch and turning it into magic. Pelé becoming something larger than a footballer. Beckham building an empire from attention. Rooney fighting every match like it was survival. None of them were just footballers. They were human beings with fears, wounds, needs, and drives that had nothing to do with a ball and a pitch. Football did not create their psychology. It revealed it. The pitch is just the place where what was already inside them got exposed under pressure. For 90 minutes, for millions of people, for history. Which is why football is never really about football. It is about what it means to be human. And the greatest players who ever lived were simply the most human of all.